Hello, this is Karen Johnson with another edition of the Proctors Historical Committee. Historical interviews where we talk to people who have been very key components in the history of Proctors and have really helped make this place work. We are recording today on July 28th, 2014, and our guest is George Lusik, who is a longtime bartender captain, everything. So, George, why don't you start out and tell me how you got to be a volunteer at Proctors?
Well, it was approximately 1980. I was working at the GE main plant, and there were several Schenectady Winter Sports Clubs members surrounding me. One that came to mind was Dick Bowers, and I know in the early days, many of the volunteers in the bartending ranks, especially were Schenectady Winter Sports Club people, and I kind of got started on a part-time basis, and it eventually evolved into more of that. So I figure I'm in my 35th year approximately.
Wow.
And I've been a captain for about 26 of those 35.
Well, Paul Hooker was the original leader of the bartenders,
right.
And he had suggested that we talk to you to get more of a hands-on-the-ground approach. So you really have been at Proctors as a volunteer almost since the very beginning, because the first season was in 1979.
Okay.
And how often did you bartend in those early days?
In those early days, I was mainly during the summer. A lot of times on Sunday nights, I was single and I was on the flatwater racing circuit, so my paddling buddy and mine were on the road quite a bit. So then, especially after I got married in '82 and was more involved, it kind of evolved. And it all depends on how many shows there were and how many captains were available, and the masses, how big the crowd was. Was it going to be? Was it going to be a rock concert? Was it going to be a symphony? A dance show? So it really depended. And then even now these days with our 4, 5, 6, how many venues we have now, it's even more voluminous. That's why we're like wired, because working on a Friday or Saturday night, which I do a lot now, there could be something going on in the GE Theater, there could be something going on in the underground like Mopco, there could be a reception upstairs in the gallery. So it's like you need to be very adaptive quickly and be able to move around.
What equipment did you have? When you came in the early days, how did the night go?
Well, a little background on equipment. Funny you asked that. I recall the Lonely Ice Machine being located outside, no lie, and we served wine out of these huge cardboard boxes, which I understand was not the best for taste. I'm not a wine drinker, so we've come a long way from that. We hand carried everything from the basement. There were no carts in those days. We were, a lot of us, a lot younger then, and we carried everything up. I believe there was only the one ice machine in the basement, only the one cooler. And product has come a long way too. I mean, the curve goes up and down as far as variety goes, and if we have a special event, someone will bring in special products, and obviously we're a lot larger now, so there's a lot of opportunity for the specialty beers and wines and stuff like that. And then also from the beginning days too, the internet was really not known to our volunteers or myself or anything like that, so contact was via phone, and that got kind of tough in the early days, especially when you had a youngin' at home and phone calls would come in late at night. I can't do this show. But now with internet, like I think like almost 100% of our volunteers are on the internet, so it's a lot more easy to, get a hold of people. So even technologically, it's, the phones, I rarely get a phone call, which is nice.
So did you, when you needed people, you had all these people signed up ahead of time, I
Yep,
assume?
mhm.
But you had all these cards on the table and you tried to give them the shows they
Well,
wanted?
we had
and-
sheets. In the early days, Paul would give us sheets, and now we get emails from Cindy of who's available. But we would, hand out the names. So that part really hasn't changed too much, other than maybe we have different categories now. The Broadway shows, the 8 runs, the month runs, the 2-week runs. Those are required. So that's a little more time consuming and a little more stringent on the volunteers, as well as any of the captains and any of our volunteer groups. But people really jump on board, and they really adapt well, which is nice. Because and I've always said the hardest part of the job is getting along with your fellow volunteer, because we all have different personalities, and it's kind of cute, because if someone has a bad night with one volunteer, they'll say, I don't want to work with that person again, and we just let them go with the flow. But that's the hardest thing. If you're first one there and you want your bar set up this way, well, first come, first serve. So it's a learning curve for some people coming in, but it has changed a lot.
So how often would you say you worked in a year in the early years at Proctors? Just make a guess.
Yeah, probably under 20.
And you were a pretty active person.
Right, true. And now it could be, depending on our Broadway schedule, for our multi-week runs, it can be more and more, and it depends on the unique opportunities. Our event out here on State Street, Summer Night, I've done that for several years, where we have the beer truck. Well, we didn't have a beer truck this year, but we serve beer and wine and soda out on the street, and then we have several beer tasting type things, and there's always those small little things that I like to hop on if I'm available, because it's fun, and you're outside, or it's outside of the norm, pre-show, intermission, and you're done. So, but
Do you have any idea how many bartender volunteers there were in the early days, and then compare that with today?
I believe now we're hovering around 200, or we would like to be there. It's hard to say too, because we have a lot of snowbirds too, that the people that are not here during the winter, but then they make up for it during the spring and fall. I'd say we were about 150 in the early days. Okay, so I think we've grown by about 50 people approximately.
But the number has changed less than the amount of times everybody has to work.
Yes.
So
very much
these
so.
are volunteers that do a tremendous amount.
Yes, they're required to do more than they ever used to, and the great majority, if not all of them, step up to the plate, and they understand their commitment. And some people come in with an expectation, and it might necessarily not be. And some of them may go to another volunteer venue, like the candy counter, or the shops, the gift shops, or maybe be an usher if they can't lift, because we do have a lifting requirement there. Yes, we have the cars, but there still is some
lifting.
Right, some lifting. So, yeah, I don't think the number of shows. And as I was speaking of other venues, there was a time when we used to have bars set up at the air shows here at the airport. I know Paul used to
yes.
Spearhead those, and I know one year the beer didn't get there in time, and it was warm, but people still drank it.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes. It was like, it was a little bit cold. It wasn't as cold as it would like it. So I know over the years there's been various things. I know when talking about Dennis Madden, I remember our 24-hour marathon, dance marathon. I worked the 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock shift. That was a fundraising thing that was just out of the ordinary. And a couple other real big events. I remember when the rock artist Steve Winwood was here, and we ran low on alcohol kind of quicks, and I had a truck, and I volunteered to bop over to Glenville Beverage and get some more. So we had happy patrons. So there's stuff like that. I remember when Whoopi Goldberg was here. I know my wife and sister-in-law were volunteering at the time also. Whoopi was asking them, "Are you going to serve alcohol?" She's apparently had some bad experiences with crowds, and she was a little bit concerned that we were serving alcohol. So, but everything went fine.
Yeah.
And she had her entourage with her and stuff like that. But those are some of the 1 year for Melodies of Christmas. I swear for many years straight, if you want to guarantee on a snowstorm, a major nor'easter, Melodies Weekend. I remember 1 year we had to cancel the Saturday performance because I believe some of the performers come from the Berkshires. They're all not from New York State. And the kids had to do 2 shows on Sunday. They actually brought in meals for them. So I was calling people, "Don't come, yes come, don't come," and we got through it. I remember one Warren Miller ski movie. It was the first time I was starting up the furnaces for the season. It got a little smoky, so we had a little test of our emergency procedures, and within 5 minutes, everything was back to normal. So,
Now, are the bartenders involved in evacuation if
no,
we
they are
have
not.
a fire?
No, they are the
A
ushers.
threat?
Yes, the ushers are trained and authorized to take care of the evacuations. We are basically just to follow their direction, and then they're obviously in charge of the handicap and the wheelchairs. So the only thing the bartending captain needs to know is who was on that night. He or she should have a sheet, and then make sure everyone's accounted for once we get out on State Street here. But that is one thing we do not have responsibility over. The
So-
beer and wine and soda stays where it is.
So typically, if there's going to be a show at 8 p.m., what's the drill for a bartender today?
Okay, they're supposed to be there no later than an hour and a half before the performance. Once they start in, they tend to favor a certain location, bar in the theater, so the captain needs to be there a good 15 minutes to a half an hour ahead of it. I'll get here at 6 o'clock and there'll be people waiting. So, but they come in, they need to be here by 6:30. We usually let them choose their own bars. Every show is different. Every show does not necessarily have the same number of volunteers. Some shows are rentals where they only do downstairs. It might be a small dance recital studio. It may be a huge dance studio. So the captain maps out what's available, and then the bartenders choose what location they would like. Once in a while, especially on real big shows, we will pre-assign, but that is rare. But then the bartenders go get their tubs. They already have their apron, and they fill up the ice, and they start filling in the product. Unless they're doing sound check, and sometimes sound checks can run long, or the performers get here late. So they basically get their bars set up in time for a meeting at 7 o'clock that the chairperson, Cindy, runs. She goes over the running times, any kind of special rules, late seating, anything, special product, just anything you need to be aware of. Is there strobe lights? Is there a gunshot in Act 4 and Scene 3 and stuff like that? And generally the doors open by 7:30 for an 8 o'clock show. We will serve up until the start of the show most times, and then if and when there's an intermission, they would serve during intermission. After that, they just put their product under their bar, bring their money up to the captain because we're responsible for refilling what we call our seed bags, and then giving the night's take, as you will, to the chairperson to deposit. And then at the end of the night, the bartenders clean up the bar, and they're allowed to bring their product downstairs once the patrons, the majority of the patrons, have left, and it's safe. The wheelchairs are out and stuff like that, and then they are free to go. So, and then after that, the captain gets to leave.
So how long after the show ends is the captain liable to be able to go?
Usually about a half an hour at the most. It depends how much product is left over, and because you can only get so many people in the refrigerator upstairs in the small room, or downstairs in the cooler. But yeah, it's usually about a half an hour, sometimes even less.
But they do have an elevator now.
Yes, they do. Yes, yeah. There was a day we had a chair, and yes, the elevator. I keep forgetting about that. That is very, very key. I know there was some bartenders at one time that would bring a backpack just to bring the ice up to help them. If they were working, the upstairs.
Yeah, the bartenders have brought in quite a lot of cash, and it is one of the businesses that supports the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea on a Broadway show night what kind of gross take we might have?
I know on a general rule, or a rule of thumb, and that depends lately, it's usually about 10% of the take. So on an average, but it depends what Broadway show it is. Some, we do 1,000. Some we do about 3,000 in our income. So it can be in the bigger shows, the rock shows and stuff like that. You're talking $200-300 in tips easily.
Oh, and these are in tips?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
but
10% of the income for the evening is about a general rule. Lately, it's been about 8 or 9% in the last couple years. Economy.
Well, let's just be kind of clear about this. There's the payment for the product, and then
Yes.
the tips.
Yes.
And the payment for the product is a big financial portion of Proctor's income,
Mm-hmm.
especially on the Broadway shows where we are cut so tight by the Broadway shows, so the things we can generate for income around the side are very important. Now, the tips have been a bartender tradition since the very beginning, and you kind of get to decide what projects will be funded by that.
There are several. I know we're asked for input, and I know they look at the list and they pick and choose. I'm not as close to that in the last several years as I was in the beginning, but I know sound system and the bass, which is called woofers, I know we replaced those years ago, which some people don't care for. I'm a bass fan myself, but
Okay.
yes, but there is a lot of refurbishing type stuff, and as you well know, there's always room for improvement. But yes, that is very, very true. So 100% of the tips go right back into the theater, which is nice.
It's very generous of the donors.
And sometimes the ushers get a tip, and then they'll just give us the and put it in.
It bleeds over into.
Right, that's right. It's all one take.
Now, recently we started taking credit cards at the bars.
Yes, we have.
So
Yes,
that's
we have.
something new. Is that hard or easy for the volunteers?
It's to be honest with you, it's a little challenging. I know we just changed our networks, I believe, but steel is a major impediment on the Wi-Fi signal, and some places in the theater works better than others. Some spots in the theater are golden, but if you get a lot of steel around, sometimes you have to walk away from the bar and get away from that. So that's easy. Some nights it's better than others, but it definitely helps. The younger generation love to pull out the plastic, and they don't believe in carrying cash. So it's
It faces a
yes,
reality of
yes
today.
it is. Yes it is, and so
So-
that is a big change too.
In the last year, what has been your favorite show to work at? Or a couple
Oh,
that you really enjoyed?
gosh.
Now, you're also a subscriber, so
Yes, yeah.
you come and work, and
Yeah.
then you come to watch.
Yes, yes.
And that's probably, with all the duties you described, more realistic for seeing the shows.
Sure, sure. Well, I know it's not this year, but back several years ago, Mariah Carey and Sony rented our theater for the whole summer, and that was before air conditioning, because they had these huge trucks of portable generators, and she actually cut a video, and it was shown on Thanksgiving Day, the Thanksgiving evening of that year. Now, as I said, that was not this year. There's just been so many, they're just been, they kind of roll in, year after year. So there's, I did not, I can't recall one right now.
Well, what
I know
makes you,
Phantom of the Opera, I did 3 or 4 of those. I love that music, so.
and you love the high school graduations? Oh, we don't have any,
We're not involved with high school graduations
but
anymore.
the dance
The dance
recitals.
recitals, we learn which ones are are the polite ones, and which ones, do the stuff like that. But, we only have to do one, and there was a day when we had to do the flowers too, and that was a lot of work. And usually a couple of the gals would take care of that, but we used to handle the flowers. We fortunately are not in that business, at least as far as Proctors go. So that was a nice enhancement, as you will, just a losing of that duty. So, but yeah, probably Phantom. As I said, some of our captains were on vacation that week and they needed extra, and I said, I'll do it. I love that music.
Aren't we
I
lucky?
love it.
Well, the biggest thing that I notice in modern times is the incredible increase of social events that we have as part of being a conference center today. And you're involved in many of those. So when
Yes.
we have an outside rental or a conference on stage, upstairs,
There are just so many. I mean, there is requests for help numerous times in almost every week. Just like last night with the moving of the James Cotton and Mona Golub's Music Haven, I believe it's called. Moving here and stuff like that, and the event on State Street they have every June. Is just so many galas and meetings and fundraisers and dinners and movies. I mean, a lot of our volunteer bartenders work the movies also. So it's the opportunities are there. You could live here,
Well-
and some of our volunteers, I swear, do. And
and you're one of them, may I say.
No, there's none.
So what
Not
is
really.
it that really makes this fun for you?
Well, I'm out of the office. I get to see a lot of people. I get to interface with a lot of people, volunteers as well as the public, and it's the arts. My music genre.
You're all
is
in
wide.
with 2 feet in your
Yes,
whole body.
Yeah. But there are people that spend a lot more time here than I do. I mean, I used to spend more time volunteer, but I do what I can right now, and in the scenarios I'm pressed into, and but there's a lot of it's fun. It really is.
That's good, and we're going to also encourage the public who might be interested in pursuing volunteering at Proctors to check our website, and we may have a short video on how to get to be a volunteer.
There you go.
So that's very exciting, and I think the people that have done it have really enjoyed it, which is great.
Because there's there's several volunteer groups, so it's not just, some people do not believe in serving alcohol, but there's ushers and there's candy counter and stuff like that.
And you need to mention that this video series is actually done as part of another volunteer group, which is the Proctors Historical Committee. And we're trying to lay down a background on the theater so that as people, as time passes, we
Sure.
can really share with the people who had their boots on the ground what happened here.
There you go.
So do you have anything else you would like to tell us about?
Not that I know of.
It's fun and challenging, and you get your mind off of, you may be having a bad day, and you come to the theater, and you just forget your troubles, and you greet and serve the public.
Well, George, it's been a pleasure talking to you today, and we thank you for your service to
Very
the
welcome.
theater. And we thank all of you for watching this conversation with George Lusik, a longtime Proctor's bartender, on July 28th, 2014. This has been part of the Proctor's Historical Committee series of interviews on the people who were important to the history of Proctor's.